How are you, Chris?
I'm good. How are you, Blair?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Can you please introduce yourself?
Chris Bruffett,
Okay.
42 years old,
Yep.
chiropractor, farmer,
Where were you born?
Jasper, Missouri.
Jasper, Missouri. Have you ever moved out of the area?
I lived in Kansas City when I went to school.
Okay. What did you go to school for?
Chiropractic,
How many years in medical school?
3 after undergrad.
3 after undergrad.
Yep.
Okay. So total time in medical school?
8 years,
8 years.
5 for undergrad, 3 for grad school.
Why did you choose to go into chiropractics?
Seemed like the right thing to do.
Seemed like the right thing to do. Somebody told you a story. You're going to make a lot of money doing chiropractics? Or?
No, mostly because of Mom.
Okay. Why?
She's a naturopath. Just was a good way to help people.
Okay. So you've got a chiropractic practice, and you also there's a big box to unfold here and unpackage here, but you farm 400 acres with your father too, right?
Correct.
Okay. What are your crops?
Row crop wheat, corn, soybeans.
Row crop. Sorry, slow down.
Wheat, corn, and soybeans.
And soybeans. Okay.
Dad milked for 40 years, so now we do beef cows. He's retired from that.
Okay. So it's just down to how many acres?
450 is what we're farming now.
Split over how many different properties?
3 farms.
3 farms. Okay. So you got to move a lot of equipment around.
Yeah, we're fortunate. We're 2 miles any direction most.
So most of the crops that you're hauling would be to Jasper Grain. You're from Jasper, Missouri, obviously.
Yes.
And Jasper Grain's about 3 or 4 miles down the road.
5-mile haul.
5-mile haul. So when you first started farming, what were you hauling the crops to Jasper Grain to the elevator with?
So Dad developed a gooseneck that he mounted a gravity wagon to. Holds 200 bushel.
Yep.
So got to where we would take that to town, wait behind 5 or 6 semis that were dumping 1,000 bushel and taking 30 minutes.
Okay.
For us to dump 200 bushel in 5 minutes and then go get another load. He's sitting there waiting on me. So when I'd get back, it's just, we'd always be waiting because we couldn't dump fast enough, didn't have enough capacity.
How many acres were you farming at that stage?
Oh, 200.
Okay.
Well, that was counting the cattle, so about 100 of row crops.
All right. So it's chewing up a lot of time. So somebody had the brilliant idea to go out and buy a semi-tractor and some form of grain trailer.
So I had a patient that was kind enough to let me borrow one for several years, and then finally got to a financial place that I could buy one, and I'd picked up more acres
along the way.
What
was the first truck you bought? It was a day cab, white GMC Volvo. What year?
GMC white, 1995 day cab.
Okay. Had an 11.1 Detroit in it, which is the.
I still have it.
Yep. Shortest stroke.
Had a wet kit so I could use the trailer I was borrowing.
Okay.
Because it's an end dump.
Shorter stroke version of the 12.7 Series 60
Yes.
Detroit, just with a little less power to go along.
Real low geared, going 5 miles, it worked fine for our purposes.
Yeah, if you didn't have to haul very far.
It's been a good truck.
So what was the reason, and here's where we start into it, what was the reason you bought a second truck? Why?
More capacity.
Okay.
So the one truck was great.
Yep.
The second one would help if we're caught at the elevator or it's going to rain, elevator's not open. Still able to cut more acres, have the capacity to hold it.
Okay. So was there a tax advantage to buying a second truck?
Well, you always need a tax write-off.
Yep.
So.
If you got some profit.
Yep.
So what was the second truck you bought?
A 1994 FLD 120.
All right. It was a farm truck.
It was. They were pulling their bulldozer with it mostly.
Okay, on a low boy or
Yep.
RGN or something.
Yep.
So it didn't have many miles on it when you bought it?
Million.
Million miles on it for a 94.
Yeah.
Okay. Had it been well maintained?
Not exactly.
Okay, how much did you buy it for?
7,000.
7,000. But the initial idea was it would be a second truck for capacity.
Yep, for a 5-mile haul.
Okay. Sounds good. So whose brilliant idea was it to go trailer trucking with this FLD 120, which had a sleeper on it? It was like an ex-Swift truck, or
Yes.
it had been used at some stage in its life. It had been used for an over-the-road trucking operation.
Correct. I believe it was Swift.
Yep.
But yeah, we got it home and just talking with Dad, he's like, why don't you put that thing on the road? It's got a sleeper. So I kicked the idea around. I came and talked to you. That's kind of how we became friends.
Yep.
Because you had been patient for a while and you'd always roll in and tell me about your latest trucking escapade. Yep. So I was like, well, I'll call Blair and go talk to him and see what I'm getting into.
It was kind of a
Different gig.
So in Missouri, if you're a farmer and you have farm tags, what are the regulations and requirements on a CDL trucking?
We're exempt from everything.
Everything. So how much do plates cost you on farm tags?
$350.
Versus $1,700
Yes.
for going out of state.
Yep.
What's the age requirements for driving a semi?
Life.
15-year-old can.
Yeah.
You-
Yep. There's a neighbor who has a 15-year-old kid drive his semi to the elevator.
No CDLA requirement.
Nope.
Just
In Missouri, you're supposed to have a Class E and a DOT physical if you're in a tractor trailer.
okay.
A straight truck, you can drive with just a Class F.
All right, because you do DOT physicals as well.
Correct.
So you know the laws and regulations required around.
The federal law, you're exempt from everything.
Okay.
But Missouri has some requirements, but most farmers ignore it
Okay.
because DOT typically doesn't mess with farmers because we're exempt from everything.
Right. So your knowledge of, even though you own a semi, your knowledge of the expansion to over-the-road trucking, let's do 48 states and buy a van.
Completely different monster.
Okay, that's why you called me in for, let's have a look at this truck and see if it's roadworthy.
Yep.
And I had reservations about putting that thing over the road initially.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So why did you choose the equipment type? Why dry van? Why did you not buy a flat? Why did you not find tanker? Why did you not go with what you already knew in the way of hopper or grain?
Well, I had a hopper trailer already. I would have loved to have done grain. I had no idea how to make money.
Okay.
I knew, after talking to you and some other people, DAT was the place to find loads.
DAT load board.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's the only way I knew how to make money at trucking was just to get on the load board and piece loads together.
Okay. So you had to start up your own authority. How did the process go for that? There was insurance costs. I think you said before you had a $16,000 cost for new authority with you as a driver.
12,000.
12,000.
Yeah.
And then when you added another driver to it with a couple of tickets on there,
He had one speeding ticket,
and it raised it to
20,000.
20,000. Okay, so that's a major cost to start up. Was that in one hit, or did you pay that over
6 months, 2 6-month hits.
2 6-month hits on that?
Yeah, so the authority was baffling at first. I got online to see what I needed. There was like 10 things, which I was like Greek to me. So a patient of mine had used a third party to set up his authority. He was a dump trucker.
Yep.
So I looked up that guy's site, and he charged $2,500 to set up your authority.
Okay.
So at that point, I was like, well, it can't be that hard. I can do it. So I just started taking it step by step, and it wasn't that big a deal after it was all said and done.
I think at that stage, didn't I put you in touch with Dave Zimmerman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Dave was a good help. Dave had had his authority 6 months, so he
Yep.
had just gone through what I was about to. So he was helpful in talking with him.
pointing in the right direction.
Yep.
Yep. Dave Zimmerman was the guy that bought my first truck that I bought and went from office cubicle to full owner operator trucking with the dry van, pretty much like Dave did. Chris did. So shout out to.
Yep. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
So the BOC3, I didn't know what that was. That's insurance. That's an agent in any state. If you have an accident, for them to sue through your agent.
Okay.
So that's what your BOC3 does for you, which NASTIC was a good way to get that. So IFTA, I set up through the state of Missouri.
Okay. Is Kentucky still separate?
Yes, had to have a Kentucky number.
Okay. And then USDOT number
Yes, that was the first thing.
and MCC number.
Yeah, once you got your insurance in place, then you could get your MC number active.
From start to finish, what was the time period from I'm gonna start on this process to I can put a driver in the truck and go?
3 weeks.
Okay.
This was the insurance filing was the delay. So after you buy your insurance, they have to file that you're over the road for your MC number.
Okay.
And there was like a 10-day delay or something for that.
All right. So we went dry van, and there was a dry van for sale somewhere.
My neighbor behind the office, actually, I was talking to him. He was like, hey, if you ever need a dry van, I got one. And I was like, oh, must be a sign. So went and looked at it. He hadn't used it for a while. It was his second trailer.
How old?
2005 Lufkin.
2005.
It was
Lufkin,
14
okay.
years old.
14 years old when you put it in service. Did you run into any problems with age of trailer?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Well, most shippers want a trailer under 10 years old, like the premier shippers. So they will reject your trailer if it's under 10 years old.
Okay.
Didn't know that until after the fact.
How many, give me a percentage of loads that you lost from the trailer being too old or?
It would say on the load, like when you're negotiating the load, or it would say only trailers under 10 years old. So I never really got rejected for it. There was just some loads I couldn't take.
Okay. How much did you buy that trailer for?
$5,000.
$5,000 sounds pretty cheap. So it had a few leak issues in the roof?
There was one front corner that had a little crack in it.
Okay.
And I sealed it with tar. And it was fine for a while, about 6 months, and then it started leaking a little again.
Okay.
And then somebody put a hole in it with a forklift at one of the shippers, and then it had more problems after that.
I've heard a lot about guys having like nice trailers, like reefer trailers, and having forklift drivers shoving shit into the sides and.
So he was
working open
putting a
holes.
second pallet on top inside the trailer and put the mast through the roof.
Jack the mast through the roof.
Yep.
Okay. And they're not going to report that to you, or?
We found out at the delivery.
Okay.
And then I called the shipper, and he said he'd take care of it, but I wanted his business, so I just went ahead and took care of it.
Right. Beer time. So dispatching the driver, you had a driver that you hired, and how were you dispatching him?
So like I said, I knew this guy for 10 years. He was unhappy at another company. So he decided that he would come on board and drive for me.
Okay.
He's a 20-year driver. So
20 years experience?
Yep. So I knew he had the one ticket, which I was a little perturbed after it took the insurance up $8,000 for the year for one ticket.
For a total of how much insurance?
$20,000.
Okay. With who?
Progressive.
Okay.
They were about the only ones that would write insurance on a new authority. So I had to figure out how to dispatch him, so that was going to be me. So I found Uber Freight, and 80% of the loads we ran were for Uber Freight at the time.
Okay.
Uber was new. They were paying 99% of the line haul back to the carrier. So they were 20 or 30 cents a mile better than anything else I could find.
Okay.
So that was my saving grace, because my very first load was when things tanked. So I hauled a load Springfield to Stillville. I hauled that load multiple times. The very first time I hauled it for $3.10 a mile. And
Dry van?
I never saw it for above $2.50 again.
Okay. And so you were doing all the dispatching, but what were you doing while you were doing dispatch?
Farming, treating patients in the evenings. So I couldn't sit at the computer and haggle over every load. So I had to line him out a day or two ahead and keep him moving.
So Uber and some other apps?
Convoy. I liked Uber because you didn't have to haggle. It was just...
More point and click and...
Yes. So the closer it got and no one had taken the load, the price went up.
Okay.
So I would try to watch that, and then it get up to where it was profitable, or I could find a reload to keep him moving.
Okay.
I would try to use Uber first, and then I would switch to Convoy, and then last resort I'd start looking at DAT.
All right. So got a driver, he's on the truck. What about maintenance issues?
There's a plethora of those.
So you're trying to do everything else you're doing in your life, farming, the chiropractor office, and the phone's going off, and things going wrong with the truck.
So that Stillville load, the very first load we haul,
Yes, sir.
he gets loaded in Springfield. First night, first load, I get the call at 1 in the morning. The tandems won't slide.
Okay.
They slid for him to get loaded, but then they wouldn't slide back for him to balance the load.
Scale
the load, yeah.
Yep.
So I said, you find a place and get it fixed. So luckily it's just a valve. They were able to change the valve out, and he was able to still get delivered on time. But
Okay.
yeah, the 1 o'clock in the morning call the first night of the first load.
What can ruin your Friday night?
Trucking can.
Trucking can. Yeah, let's go on to maintenance issues, driver damages. Garner's Diesel was your shop of choice, and that's the same one that I use. Shout out to Sean and Danny at Garner's Diesel for keeping us running here. They charge pretty fair prices, but the price really cranked up there. Driver screw ups. So there was a bobtail rollback.
That was down the line a ways. First, he turned too short and hit a pole with the trailer.
Okay. Yep.
$1,200, $1,500 damage to
On
the
the
trailer.
trailer?
Yep. They had to rebuild the side, basically.
Okay. And there was the fuel tank damage.
Wow, that was later.
That was later on too.
Yeah. So the
What happened
bobtail
there?
rollback, we'd hauled some stuff for a patient of mine, friend of mine, and he was coming back.
A stop sign.
Stop sign. Somehow he rolled back into the guy behind him. I had to pay that guy $2,500 cash to keep him from filing on the insurance.
Off the insurance, so the insurance
Didn't go higher.
Didn't get raised up.
Yes.
The fuel tank damage. That was
that was towards the end of his tenure. He had somehow broken the passenger mirror.
Yep.
So he couldn't see when he was turning.
Yep.
So he swings extra wide
Yep.
and somehow manages to spill coffee on his leg
Yep.
and then drives the mother right off onto both fuel tanks. Thank God hazmat wasn't called, because it's $10,000 I heard just for hazmat to come. But it's a $4,000 tow fee, 2 tow trucks to get him back in the road. And then the damage to the fuel tanks, I think it was $3,000 or $4,000 to buy the tanks used,
Go.
and then $4,000 to have them installed.
Yeah, the costly bit of.
So the profit margin is so thin on dry van, you can't have that. Your driver will break you in a second.
Yeah. So basically, if you're gonna start up your own authority and buy a truck, it all kind of depends on
All
the
hinges
driver.
on the driver.
Doesn't matter what condition you could buy a $150,000, $200,000 brand new truck. If you've got a driver that's gonna ruin stuff, then it's still the same damage is gonna be incurred.
Well, it's probably more on a newer truck. Well, I don't know, but it's, at least if he tore up my equipment, I only had $12,000 in it.
Yep. So you had
Before maintenance.
how long was your authority active for?
1 year.
1 year. You had 2 drivers in that time. How did the second driver you had?
First driver felt bad after he tore up my equipment.
Yep.
And then he decided he needed insurance that I couldn't offer him. So he went back to the carrier he was driving for before he left them to drive for me.
How much were you paying him?
50 cents a mile.
So the second driver you found?
He was living in his car. He had trucked in the past, tried to get out. Things didn't go well. So I lent him some money. I did his DOT physical for free.
How much money you lent him?
$2,000, I think.
Okay, to go and get his driver's license figured out.
Yes, yeah, he had to.
Living costs.
Yep. So I got his DOT physical done, his drug screen, his background check, all that stuff. He had a clean record, so said he loved older equipment. He could actually kind of turn a wrench, where my first driver could not.
Couldn't, yeah, I know that.
So I went with him, and he was great for 6 weeks.
6 weeks, was that as long as he lasted?
Yeah.
Why did he turn out?
Why'd he quit?
Yeah, why'd he quit?
So we ran hard over Christmas and New Year's. Best month I ever had. We made, I think, 24 grand or in the month of December.
Yep.
First 2 weeks of January were pretty good. And then the new air compressor went out on the truck
Okay.
while he was in Ohio.
Yep.
So Garner's covered their work, so they had to send the new air compressor up to Ohio, and he had to sit in the hotel while the TA, I believe, fixed it, and got him back in the truck. And then we ran for 2 more weeks, I think, and then the rates went to crap. So we still had fuel tank issues. They leaked when you couldn't fill them all the way up from the first driver's damage. So I took that time of low rates to put the truck back in the shop to get the fuel tanks replaced. And the truck was in the shop for a week, and during that week he went ahead and found another job without telling me. I called him to tell him I had a load for him the next day. He said, "Not me, I found a new job, see ya."
Bye.
Yep.
Gone.
And that's when I shut the authority down.
Okay, so it was one year total with the authority.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so before I put the truck on the road, I had Bob, thank you Bob, for coming out and inspecting the truck, and you were there.
Bob's full name?
Lodestein.
Bob Lodestein.
So you guys came out, and Bob had trucked for years. He had done it all. And with Blair's experience, I knew I would get good info.
It was a piece of crap. That's what I thought.
From the two of you.
I didn't want to tell you, but it was a piece of crap.
So basically what I learned was every brake chamber, every airline, and a plethora of other things needed replaced. So we put a gear reduction starter, let's see, airbags, clutch linkage, adjusted the clutch, height control rod for the chassis, lower yokes, U-joints, replaced the fluid in the differentials and transmission, installed a 4 battery box where it only had 3. It would barely even crank it.
Yep.
So we put 4 batteries on it. They custom built a box for that. Replaced the dash and the valve, and shock absorbers, airbags, injectors. Had an injector that was leaking. I replaced all 6. Needed a new air compressor. Like I said, every brake chamber, belts, all that stuff.
Total cost?
Total cost before it ever went out, $12,797.
$12,800.
That was
and the initial purchase price was
$7,000.
$7,000. All right, we're up to 20 grand here for a truck. Next.
This was March 16th.
March 16th.
My authority went active March 17th.
Okay.
Okay, we ran for 2 weeks. We're back in the shop on the 25th of March.
All right.
The 5th wheel was jacked up. He couldn't hardly get the trailer dropped where he'd have to unhook to get loaded.
Yep.
So that was $2,800.
Okay.
Okay. I think a day later, had a local load that we were going to haul. ECM failed.
Oops, they're expensive.
$3,252
Yes,
and a
it was.
$300 service call. Okay, at that same time, the trailer needed work done. They fixed the light, did some wheel seals and brakes and stuff, and that was $400.
Okay.
Also at that's the 300.
How much did the trailer cost again?
$5,000.
Okay.
Okay, we ran for another 2 weeks, and then the air-to-air and the radiator needed replaced.
Okay. Cost?
$2,000 for the air-to-air,
Yep.
and the radiator was $2,000, and then labor that was $5,500 for the air-to-air and the radiator replacement.
Okay. Ouch.
Then an airbag went out. That was $300.
Okay.
2 weeks later, the coolant light kept coming on. They fixed that and some gaskets and some hose clamps, and that was $650.
Yep.
2 weeks later, cruise control wouldn't work. That was $100.
Switch.
And then they also found an air leak in the dash. Oh, and then it was getting hot, and my driver needed AC. So
Middle of summer, wasn't it?
that was the 30th of April.
Yep.
$1,900.
Heat is my kryptonite.
Heat is my kryptonite, is what he was told, what I was told. I got to have AC, which I understand. Let's see, 21st of May, we put a pyro gauge in it and a manual fan switch to try to keep the truck from overheating.
Yep.
And replace some U-joints and some more stuff on the drive line, some wheel seals.
Total
$3,300.
Oh, okay.
And then also the trailer door was jacked up.
Yep.
It needed some more work on the 21st of May, $750.
Okay.
And then another airbag went out, $100 for that.
Yep.
July 6th, we had a light on the trailer that was $300 to fix, and we had a headlight that was bad, and the ECM cooler plate and water filter head was having issues, and the fuel lines needed replaced. $800 for that.
Yep.
$136 for a clutch adjustment. And then the cam followers needed fixed.
Cam followers on an N14. Yep.
$4,200.
Oh, yeah, that's always a good one.
And we're not quite halfway through.
Okay.
August 2nd, the horns were acting up. It was $430 to fix those. And then, S-cams and whatnot on the trailers and brakes and all that.
That's on the Lufkin trailer.
That was on the trailer.
Yep.
That was almost the price of the trailer, $3,500.
So it's almost like a $12,000 trailer at this stage.
And then October 1st, we needed a new clutch, and when he got the clutch out, we needed a new transmission as well. So I bought a used transmission. So that work was $6,050.
$6,000. Okay, for a reman transmission.
Yes.
Okay.
And then 4 weeks later, we did an underhaul on the truck while it was down, $3,000.
For bearings and rods and
I was
whatnot.
doing oil samples at the time,
Yep.
per your recommendation, and there were starting to be some metal starting to show up.
Lead and
So I went
copper
ahead and did the underhaul
Okay.
because I did not want to spin a bearing and have to do an overhaul.
Crank and block and whatnot.
Pistons,
Yep.
all that. Yeah, we just did the underneath. So another trailer service at that time, $300. And then the new ECM failed in December. There was no charge for the part, but there was some air leaks and an axle and some valves that all needed another light. That was an issue. So that ended up being $2,600 before it left the shop.
Okay.
And then the new air compressor failed when he was in Ohio,
Yep.
which I
Had
think,
one sent up there.
yep, had one. The garners covered the part and the labor.
What time of year was that?
That was December.
Okay. Put the driver in the motel, paid for the motel.
Yep. And that, I don't know, that was ended up being $1,500 or something still I had to pay.
Yep.
And then the fuel tanks, replacing those was $3,100.
That was just from a driver screw up,
That-
$3,000 for,
That was just for the labor. That's not counting the tanks. I bought those used.
right.
And it was $2,000 or $3,000 for the used tanks, because that was like a third of what new ones cost. It was ridiculous.
Yep.
And that's about the time I shut the Authority down. Starter issues. They put new wires in because a new starter failed. So that ended up being $125. When the new part started failing was when I got frustrated.
Right.
So, and that's about it. I think it was $70,000 I spent on the truck and trailer.
So over the whole operation, what did you lose out of it? What were you up and what were you
I
down?
was down about the $12,000 the driver cost me when he drove the truck off the road.
Would you do it again?
So my goal in getting into trucking,
Yep.
I didn't really want to get rich. I wanted to keep the truck moving instead of setting. So the worst thing for semi is for it to set.
And not make money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the longer it sets, hoses rot. You know, if it's going over the road, you're keeping it up in shape.
Yep.
So the truck at least paid to fix itself up. So I still have the truck and the trailer. I use them both on the farm.
Yep.
So yes, I lost some money, but I didn't lose much, and I would have never been able to get the truck in the shape it was if it hadn't gone over the road.
Right.
So I wanted to be able to step back as my driver got to a point where he could run like an owner-operator. I wanted to kind of be his banker, so to speak, and let him be able to get his own loads and truck and make
Him run under your authority.
under my authority, my equipment, but him do all the work and make 90% or something like that. I'd just take 10%.
Gotcha.
So that was my goal. If I could find a driver that could handle that, would I do it again? I would think about it.
If you could hire me, you'd
Absolutely.
probably do it again?
Absolutely. Yes, but you would never do that. So that's the problem. If you get a driver who's good, he can do it on his own.
Yeah.
So it's finding that guy that is a capable hand but doesn't have the means to or doesn't want to buy a $100,000 truck and get his own authority and take all that risk on his own shoulders.
Right. Just help somebody step up to that next level.
Yes.
Yep. Any regrets?
I mean, it was a learning experience. I'm glad I did it. Would I do it again? Like I said, only if I had an excellent driver.
Right.
But you can't afford to pay an excellent driver running dry van.
Yeah, 50 cents a mile is pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, for a
The
dry
profit
van.
margin is so thin that unless you're in the truck, it's hard to make it work.
Right.
So to recap, after a year of trucking, first of all, don't take a farm truck and try to put it over the road. Second of all, it all hinges on the driver. He makes or breaks you. That's it. Third of all, plan on having headaches constantly. And the meme that best sums it up, shout out to David Hines.
Dude, it's a fucking trap. I am broke.
When will be the best time to become owner-operator?
Don't do it. It's a fucking trap. I am broke as shit. I am literally my banker's worst nightmare. My accountant wonders how the fuck I'm still in business. I'm 27 and look like a 40-year-old man because my hair is going gray. I can't make it through the day without a handful of ibuprofen and coffee. And at least twice a day, I think about steering this motherfucker right into the ditch and praying to God that it takes me and this fucking truck out.
That says it all.
That's a classic video, that one.
Yes.